What's up, and welcome into the Berryman Breakdown. I am your host, Brian Berryman, here to break down the Week 5 Thursday night football matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. As always, this will be a GPP-focused video on the DraftKings Showdown slate for Thursday night. I'm going to take you guys through a brief run-through of the injury report, followed by how Vegas is seeing this game playing out and how you can use FantasyLabs to capture those first place prizes on Thursday night. Without further ado, let's break it all down. All right, guys, let's take a look at the injury report really quickly for both sides of the ball here. We do not have practice information for the Broncos yet as of Wednesday when I'm recording this. So I would take some of this with a grain of salt, but the two main ones we're going to have to worry about, Jonathan Taylor has been ruled out for this game with that ankle injury. So the backfield for the Colts is going to be commanded mostly by Nyheim Hines in this game. I'll get into the Colts backfield a little bit more in the player-by-player breakdown. On the Broncos side of the ball, Javonte Williams tore his ACL last week. So the backfield there will be split between Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon for this week. A lot of this other stuff I wouldn't pay too much attention to at this point. Again, there's no real huge player concerns yet on the Broncos side of the ball. But check back in on Wednesday night or Thursday morning to make sure that we have a clear picture of what's going on in this game. But I wouldn't worry too much about the injury report outside of Jonathan Taylor and obviously Javonte Williams, who is out for the season. All right, quick look at how Vegas is seeing this game. This game opened with a total of 43.5. That line really has not moved much since the open, sticking around the 42.5 point line for the over-under. And we do have a open with the Broncos as a 3-point favorite that has since moved to a 3.5 point favorite. So no significant movement. I think I would have to agree with Vegas. This is setting up to be a slower pace game. There shouldn't be a ton of scoring. Both offenses have sort of struggled to start this season. So somewhere around that 43-point range is where we should be targeting this game. And when we're thinking about how this game is going to be playing out while we're building our lineups, let's keep in mind that that is the most likely outcome. Obviously, we have different ways that this game can play out. It could unexpectedly turn into a shootout with both of these great quarterbacks finding some rhythm on offense and challenging these defenses. That's certainly a scenario that you can play for. But I think if we played this game out thousands of times, we would see a scenario somewhere between both teams scoring about 2 to 3 touchdowns and limiting the amount of points that are being scored in this game. All right, guys, let's move into the strategy portion of the video where I will be breaking down how I think the field will be building a majority of their lineups, kind of going over the chalk construction. So I'll do that first. Then we'll go over the Pearson correlation matrix and my simulations and kind of talk about how I think I will be attacking this slate come Thursday night. With the uncertainty surrounding the Denver Broncos running game, I do believe that the field will be gravitating towards the Denver Broncos passing game in this slate. With the two highest projected players on the slate being Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton, I do think they will be commanding a good chunk of the captain's usage from the field. So for the chalk build, let's go with Russell Wilson at captain, and then we will put Courtland Sutton in here. I do think this is going to be a very popular start to a lot of people's lineups on Thursday. I think would make sense just given our projection on Eric Sauber and his low price tag in lineups that have Russell Wilson as the captain. I believe he is going to be a solid choice and a popular choice amongst the field because it provides some nice salary relief to get up to some of the other higher projected players on the slate. So this is the start that I'm going to be trying to leverage against the field. I'll go over that a little bit later into more detail, but I think this roster is then probably going to be rounded out by Nyheim Hines and Michael Pittman. So that's going to be what I would consider the chalk lineup construction. This is going to be how a lot of our opponents are going to be starting their rosters. And we need to think if we know where our opponents are going to be placing their money, where they're going to be betting this game, and how it's going to play out. How can we leverage that in order to project and propel our lineups past theirs on our path towards first place? So let's take a look here. I'm going to bring up the Pearson correlation matrix first. If you guys aren't familiar with this, if you're maybe watching this video for the first time, essentially what I do every week is I take the simulations that are powered by the FantasyLabs simulation engine, and I'm able to run them through a program that I built that shows me how every player is correlated against every other player on the slate throughout those simulations. So this is going to help us in determining which players we should be playing together most often in lineups, and maybe identify who we also shouldn't be pairing players with as well. So just taking a look, the highest correlation on the entire slate is Russell Wilson to Courtland Sutton. Talked about that a little bit. These two have started to develop a nice chemistry over the last couple of weeks, and I do believe that this is going to be a popular pairing tonight. As the correlation matrix is showing here, it is definitely a solid play. But if you are going to be going to that combination, you have to be mindful of the rest of your roster and how you want to be building that out, because it is going to be popular. The second highest correlation then after that is Russell Wilson to Jerry Jeudy. Again, it's a pretty concentrated attack on Denver. Those two command a large chunk of the target share. So I'm not surprised to see that those are the two highest correlations on the Broncos side of the ball. Flipping over to the Colts side of the ball, highest correlation on the board, Michael Pittman and Matt Ryan, followed closely. Well, I guess not even that closely, but Mo Alley Cox would come in second at 0.29. Basically a tie with Alec Pierce at 0.3. So clearly the alpha in the Indianapolis Colts receiving core is going to be Michael Pittman, a very solid play at his price tag. I would expect him to continue to see a nice target share in this Colts offense, especially as they will be without Jonathan Taylor on Thursday night. It may force them to the air more often than they typically would otherwise. All right, let's go over the simulation portion of the video here. Again, if you guys aren't familiar with this, essentially what I do is when I take all of our projected lineup or projected point totals from the simulations that we run at FantasyLabs, I then calculate the player's standard deviation for those simulations across the entire simulation sample size. And I take them through another program that I built to be able to put together a optimal lineup percentage for every player in both the flex and the captain spot. So these numbers here are going to give us a percentage chance that each player lands in their respective categories, either flex or captain. So I highlighted these top 7 players here on the board to basically tell you that you should not be playing captains outside of Russell Wilson, Courtland Sutton, Nyheim Hines, Michael Pittman, Jerry Jeudy, Matt Ryan, Melvin Gordon. That's over 90% of the outcomes that are going to be on this slate on Thursday night are going to be from one of those 7 players. There will be portions of the field that chase the 1% and 2% outcomes, but over time, those are negative expected value plays, and we shouldn't be straying too far off the board with our captain spots, because you do have to nail that captain spot in order to have a chance at being or having the optimal lineup, right? So there are circumstances where the highest scoring player isn't necessarily the best captain, but that is taken account for in the simulations, because what the simulator is doing is putting together optimal lineups. So the full optimal lineup construction for each simulation run. So even with the fact that it may not be the highest scoring player, that's being taken account for through the program and into these numbers. So I wouldn't stray too far away from these 7 players tonight, as anything outside of that is essentially a Hail Mary. So also wanted to highlight here that Phillip Lindsay and Mike Boone are solid options in the flex spot, but not necessarily in the captain spot. And I think that makes a ton of sense. They should be on the field quite a bit, but the ceiling and upside is going to be limited just because of the backfield split that both of them are going to be a part of in this game. Okay, so knowing that we have this chalk roster construction, how can we leverage this in order to get to first place? Um, an easy way that is jumping out right away is, well, if everyone's going to be betting on the Broncos passing game, why don't we bet on the Broncos running game? There's a lot of hesitation around the industry and stuff that I've read about Melvin Gordon taking on the RB1 role and handling the workload. I just don't agree with the hesitation. He's an established running back in this league. He's an elite around the goal line running back, and his usage has been great, even without the loss of Javonte Williams. So now that we do not have Javonte in this lineup, we can expect a large amount of the carries to be going through Melvin Gordon. I mean, if we're just looking at some of his pure usage from over the last few weeks, he only played a limited amount of snaps last week because he did get hurt, but he's been around 50% of the snaps in general over the last few weeks since starting the season. So the Broncos clearly like what they have in Gordon. He has had some fumbling issues, which may be cutting into some of his snaps here. But at the end of the day, I do just think that with the popularity of the Broncos passing attack, this opens us to a nice leverage spot at the captain spot with Melvin Gordon. Going to bring back up the simulation portion of just so we can kind of take a look back at it. I have Melvin Gordon at right around 10% chance at the captain spot, which is right in line with Pittman, Judy, Ryan, and Gordon. So a pretty step back from Sutton and Wilson, but he's right in that next range of these next five guys. He's pretty much an equal chance, right? So if we think that the field is going to be gravitating mostly to these top two guys, and rightfully so, we can leverage that by betting that the touchdowns come through a different avenue in this game. Wilson and Sutton can still have a great game and not score. Maybe Wilson only throws one touchdown and it goes to Judy instead. Or maybe the Broncos score 3 touchdowns and they're all on the ground. There's just different ways that we need to be thinking through how the game could play out. Make sure it's realistic and reasonable. That's still going to give us the same amount of, or close to the same amount of projected points as the chalk roster construction will have. Because if we're just building the exact same way as the rest of the field, it's going to take a very unique player in order for your lineups to jump ahead of all those people that are playing the chalk roster construction, right? So let's make sure we're differentiating our lineups in a way that it's still realistic, but it's also giving us a chance at shooting towards first place. So if we're betting on this in this situation where we're betting on Melvin Gordon being the highest point scorer on the slate and taking points away from Russell Wilson and Cortland Sutton, maybe then we can bet on the scenario I just talked about where maybe Melvin Gordon scores 2 touchdowns and Jerry Jeudy scores 1 touchdown and keeps Cortland Sutton kind of at bay, right? Then in that situation, now we're betting on 3 touchdowns from the Broncos. So we're going to want, based on the Vegas numbers here, it's projecting to be a close game. We're going to also want to bet on some scoring from the Colts side of the ball. And I have no issue going with Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman here because of the what we saw in the correlation matrix that Pittman is the clear alpha in this receiving group. He's been tallying up tons of targets. Outside of him not playing in week 2, he had 13 targets week 1, followed by 9 targets in week 2 and 6 targets in week 3. So the snap counts he's nearly on the field every play as well. So betting on this battery here as well is going to be a great option. And it is staying away from the potential chalk that we will see in Nyheim Hines, given the fact that Jonathan Taylor is out in this game. So right away, just off the bat, with the way that we've built this roster, it should be fairly different construction. I wouldn't say it's going to be completely unique though, because we still are using those 7 highest scoring players from the simulations, right? So these 7 players that I was talking about are going to be the highest owned players. So we're going to need to get somewhat creative with our final 2 roster spots to make sure that we have a unique roster so that if we are right and we do have the lineup that wins that night, we're not splitting it 300, 400, 500 ways and cutting into our expected value or our return, right? So let's look here. I would probably try and think through how I could make this lineup unique. From here, we have about 4,400 in average salary left for each roster or each roster spot remaining. So what you could do is add both kickers. I'm not a huge fan of that. It caps the upside of your lineup, but if you're projecting a sort of a slugfest type game where maybe both kickers will kick 4 field goals, you can bet on that. It's not my favorite roster construction, so I won't be going there. But I think betting on Paris Campbell is a solid option. I don't think his ownership will be too crazy, probably somewhere around the 20 to 25% range if I had to guess. Check back in on Thursday when we have projected ownership. Right now, we do not have that for this game yet. But then we could round this lineup out in a fashion that will, again, not leave too much projected points on the board, but let's try and limit our duplications with the remaining spot on the board. So some guys that are popping out to me, I talked a little bit about Eric Salbert, but I do think he's going to be popular. Kendall Hinton is interesting. Last week he had some solid playing time. He was on the field for over 50% of the snaps, had 3 targets. The upside appears to be a little bit capped, but all it takes is one broken play or one touchdown, and he's sneaking into the optimal at his price. So if we round this lineup out here, it's a pretty unique construction because we have 2 receivers without the quarterback. We're going Melvin Gordon in the captain spot, which is going to be slightly unique in itself. I think we'll have to see how the ownership comes in. But I do believe that a large chunk of the field is going to be betting on that Broncos passing attack. So we're a little bit unique there. So we're fading Russell Wilson. We're fading Cortland Sutton in this lineup, which are 2 of the highest projected players, as well as the highest projected owned players, most likely on this slate, while still making sure that we're getting the high correlation with Matt Ryan and Michael Pittman. We're leaving in this lineup, we're leaving, 4,200 on the table. So this lineup would not be duplicated at a high clip. It is leaving a good amount of salary on the table, so we would need some stuff to go our way, but we will be unique with this sort of roster construction. So just talking through off the cuff, how we can be building rosters differently while still making sure that we are putting ourselves in position to make our rosters unique and still give us a chance at first place. So that's going to do it this week, guys, for the Berryman Breakdown. I really appreciate you watching. If you don't already, I would appreciate a follow on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @13ERRYMAN. Please like and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that as well. These videos are coming to you free of charge. So that helps keep the videos up and running. So that'll do it for this week, guys. I will see you back here on the Berryman Breakdown for the Week 6 matchup. Good luck this week and have a great rest of your day.